Hello and welcome to Taskmaster Talks with Kevin Sullivan. I'm your host, JP John Poz from the Two-Man Power Trip of Wrestling. And of course, joining me is the star of the show, the former WCW and ECW World Tag Team Champion, former NWA Florida World Heavyweight Champion. He is, of course, one of the greatest minds and bookers ever in history of professional wrestling, the Games Master, the Taskmaster, the Devil himself, Mr. Kevin Sullivan. Kevin, how you doing today, sir?
Great, John. Beautiful day here today. A little windy, but nice and sunny. So it's a beautiful day at the beach.
We were just talking a little bit off air about the history of the business and how many people were making money back in the day from the business. What do you think about the current state of the business? They're saying CM Punk is returning to AEW. They're saying Daniel Bryan. So what do you think about the current state of wrestling where it is right now?
Well, there's a select few guys that are making real serious money. Like, the guys on top in AEW and Vince's guys are making it. And I guess some guys in Ring of Honor are making it. But other than that, it's still independent shows that run once a month. And everybody's ambition is to get to now AEW and WWE, right? That's a hard way to go, even if you're working every weekend,
Yep.
You're going to be making a pretty good payday each night if you're working Friday and Saturday, because not many people run on Thursday, not many people run on Friday. And as we were talking, I remember in the Carolinas, they were running 4 towns a night. Florida was running 2. Tennessee was running about 8 towns a night. Almost even Pensacola, the Gulf Coast, they had 2 ends. They had the Florida end and they had the Mississippi, Louisiana end. So they were running 2 to 3 towns, a little territory. And guys didn't make anything near what the guys on top are making today. But a lot of guys made a very good living. Guys, if you were on top in Florida, you were making close to $100,000. Some guys were making more. And that was in the early 80s, so things were a lot cheaper. And my hat goes out to these guys because they're busting their ass and busting their bodies up, because every night they got to go out and give it 110%. I'm not saying the guys in my era, when there was territories, didn't do that. But if you went to a spot show, the only guy I ever saw go off the top rope and slam on a spot show was Rick. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You would just take it easy because your body's 7 days a week. Now these guys are busting their ass and they all want to be seen and they're all trying to outdo one another, which is great. But you see a lot more injuries today than you did back in the day.
No doubt about that.
The injuries catch up to you, John. I was never one to worry about concussions because I think I've only had 3 in my life. I might have had a couple more that I didn't know of. But I think I told you the story. One time, Dutch Mantel and I were roommates, but he was a heel and I was a babyface. And this was in South Carolina where there was a territory inside of Crockett's territory. It was Dutch's brother. And I landed on my head, and 3 days later, I didn't even realize that 3 days had passed. So,
wow.
This concussion stuff is tough. And then, these high risk moves that they do for high spots, knees, ankles, elbows, they're not made to do it constantly, landing that hard. So my hats are off to these young men and women because they're busting their ass chasing a dream that I'd say 50% aren't going to get past the independent. Would you say that's a good figure?
Yeah, definitely. Maybe he could be less. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you say, is the wrestling business in better shape with Punk coming back and Daniels crossing over, and it looks like Rick is going to go over.
Yep.
Yeah, but we're going to have to see the numbers explode, which will drive house shows because you're going to need those house shows. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of towns that AEW, I'm just signaling them out, AEW could go to that haven't been run in a long time. And they could run a week tour in Texas. They could run a week tour in California, a week tour in the New York, New Jersey, Northeast end very easily. So I just hope it works out for all these guys because I admire them all.
I just heard a quote from Nash basically saying, I think he worked with Hogan, let's say he said 30 times or something, and he knew that he was going to be making more money and there was no chance of injury. To guys today, he was saying probably, maybe some make good money, whatever, but probably not making as much money. Can they say the same thing about the injury? Okay, the match won't get the star rating or whatever public appeal, but he was saying it was very important to him to make sure that he was healthy, and he loved working with Hulk because he 100% of the time he goes, I'm never going to get hurt working with this guy.
Yeah, and I'll give you another example. When the Attitude Era was going on, right? Those guys were busting their ass.
Yep.
All The Rock had to do because he was so over was raise his eyebrows and do his little stick, and you smell what The Rock is cooking.
Yep.
And when you're over, you don't have. That's what I think Kevin was alluding to. When you're over, like Hogan was and Kevin was, you don't have to do as much in it. Okay, they don't get the star power, meaning on the sheets. You can ask me how the surgeon was.
Right.
So, can you hold on 1 second, John?
Sure.
What, honey?
You didn't ask me how the surgeon was.
Wow.
He said he had to stretch it and stretch it and stretch it to get it down my elbow.
Wow.
He said he didn't think it was going to stick.
Wow. Well,
He said, I wish I had a million patients like you.
my wife just had a tricep. Sorry about that. She had a tricep reattached, and the surgeon said hers was so bad he never thought it was going to work, and it worked. So,
Wow.
and she hasn't taken a bump.
I was going to say, maybe she's bumping. Maybe she's becoming a wrestler.
Yeah. So
But you're saying that it's not going to be in the sheets, basically. You're saying like they're not going to get the star
They're
rating.
not going to get a 5-star. Think about this. There are people that control the business or have a lot of control of the business that have never been in the other side of the dressing room, and they like somebody, and yet they put them over 5-star match, 5-star match, 4-star match, 6-star match. I think what a star should mean, meaning 5 stars or 6 stars, is when it sells out and turns people away. This
Right.
whole thing is to drive money for the company and the talent. And I understand this, that we all have to start somewhere. But the guys that had longevity, and Kevin had his rash of injuries, and I think the reason why Kevin had the rash of injuries was he was so tall, 7 foot. Hogan's injuries were almost self-inflicted. You know what I mean? None of us thought that hitting the ropes and dropping a leg at 300 pounds was going to destroy your back. Now, that's because we weren't coached by a doctor or a trainer or anything saying, well, you can do that once in a while, but every night, sometimes twice a night, that ain't going to work. You know, your body's not built to take that. So they're caught in a catch-22. The younger guys gotta go out and show their best. Yet on the other hand, I think it can limit their career because it seems to me there's a lot more injuries. Do you think so?
For sure. It definitely seems that way. It seems like they're always hurt.
Yeah.
Even all the girls, it seems like, man, they're taking off months at a time with injuries and stuff. It's just a lot of injuries, too many injuries. A lot of them could be saved if they did, maybe a little bit less of the stunts.
Yeah, and you mentioned the girls, and we're going to hear some flack about this. But most of the girls I've seen working are in such fine condition.
Mm-hmm.
There's no padding on their body. It's like they've trained down they almost look like bodybuilders. They all have abs and all this, but there's no cushion. And they if you're 130 pounds and you're diving out of the ring, how much protection are you when you're in that good a shape for your knees and your ankles and elbows?
Yeah. Even Sasha Banks and Alexa Bliss, they may be smaller than that. They may be like 110, 115. I mean, they're smaller and they're taking these crazy bumps and stuff and landing on their head and all this other crazy stuff.
Right. And they're very good. I mean, and then I heard they're both not going to make SummerSlam. Is that true?
I don't know why, but that's what they're saying. Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks may not make SummerSlam, but there was no reason as to why they didn't. I don't know if that's COVID or I don't know what that is.
They said undisclosed reasons. And I think it's what you just said. It's COVID.
Wow.
And they don't want to, start that rush again, which we're seeing. I was supposed to be in the New York, New Jersey area this week, and they canceled the show at the last minute because they're only allowed 50 people in the building at a time for a signing. It's I wish we get back to normalcy, but I think I told you I had trouble with my knee. I went to see my doctor, and I thought it was, going to have to get a knee replacement, but he said it was just arthritis, and he was going to shoot something in my knee. It wasn't cortisone. It was some kind of, it was almost like a padding he was going to put in. He said it would help relieve the pain. And I turned to him and I said, when are we going to get back to normal? He said, this is going to be the normal from going on. He said, he thinks that this thing is going to keep mutating. Because I guess the only thing we can compare this to in the last 100 years is that Spanish flu.
Right.
And I saw pictures, John, you'd appreciate this, where the Yankees were playing.
Oh.
And I think they were the Yankees then, or the Highlanders, one of the two, right? Because they were the Highlanders first.
Right.
The batter, the catcher, and the umpire had masks on.
Wow. Never seen that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, not cool, but I mean, that's pretty weird. Like, kind of almost like the umpires today wearing the masks.
Yeah. Yeah. So history repeats itself, obviously.
Yeah. Big time. And it's funny now. The Yankees seem to be switching places with your Red Sox right now.
Yeah, yeah. You didn't have
I
to
love
rub it in.
I love it.
watched the
Hopefully,
highlight.
they continue. Hopefully, that stays that way.
Yeah.
But
So
for today's topic, sticking to a little wrestling, we're going to be talking about 1998 WCW Road Wild, 1998 from Sturgis again. The Sturgis Motorcycle Rally in Sturgis, South Dakota. This was held on August 8th, 1998. And they say, again, the attendance is 8,500. So it went from 5,000 to 6,500. Now it's 8,500 is what they're saying.
on
There's
the
no,
nose.
yep, on the nose. Exactly. There's no way to tell, right? I mean,
No, there's no
every
way.
year the figure is wrong.
Yeah.
The tagline, road fast, road hard. No one knows where this road goes, road wild. And the pay-per-view buys 365K. So pretty healthy on the pay-per-view buy there. Very good. Is that a lot to do with Jay Leno?
I think this was one of Eric's brilliant ideas. Do you remember when him and Hogan took over the show?
Yes, I was going to bring that up to you. That was great. Yeah.
That created a casual wrestling fan because at that period, everybody was a wrestling fan, just about. You know what I
Yep.
mean? I'd go in and take a sauna somewhere, and there'd be businessmen and lawyers right after I worked out. I'd be taking a sauna, and the guy would say, "You play football?" I said, "No, I wrestle." "Oh, I don't know much about wrestling." 2 minutes later, they tell me the finishes. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So when they took that over, it was like, hey, people are thinking Jay Leno isn't going to do that. This isn't going to work. You know what I mean? They bit into it. If it was a work, they would have done something. They went to a commercial break and got security and police to take them off. But they were so invested into the storyline, they thought it was real.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
then when Jay got there, you know, the the one thing that always stuck out in my mind, I was standing with J.J. Dillon, and Leno grabbed an arm bar on Hogan, right, and twisted his arm, and Hogan went to his knees.
Yep.
And J.J. was like Nostradamus. He said, "This will be on the cover of the newspapers tomorrow, USA Today," and he was right. It was on the cover. You know that
Yep.
to me. How much do you give up? You know, and of course, they wanted to keep that in their pocket to be able to go with Jay, and Jay plugged the pay per views. So I think it was the right thing to do, but I would, I thought if they really wanted to, if they had hurt Jay and taken him out in a stretcher with paramedics in the ring, cops coming, like a total chaos scene, and him putting an ambulance and taking off, that would have made big publicity, but it would have been positive for wrestling. You know, he should have known better. I can hear people saying it now, right? You should have known better. Like when Andy Kaufman wrestled Lawler and Lawler foul dropping, people were saying,
Yep.
"Oh, Kaufman should have known better." You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
So how did that happen with Jay Leno? Like, first of all, I know like why it happened. He's just the mainstream attention, but how did it go down? How did you get Leno? Is that just a total Bischoff thing?
I think it's a Bischoff and Hogan thing. I think Hogan knew everybody in Hollywood because one time I was with Hulk. I flew out to one of his movies he was making, and we went into L.A. and we went to a sushi place, and him and I were eating. And the next thing, in walks this guy, pulls up to the table with us. It's Arnold. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So I mean, that's the kind of circles Hogan was running in. So everybody and then everybody saw the numbers what wrestling was doing. They were trying to cross promote, But Eric did a hell of a job doing that. But I think Hogan was the one. If it wasn't Hulk Hogan opening the door for Eric, if there was no Hulk Hogan, anybody else, I don't think Leno would have done it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, he was such a big name and so known and such
Right.
big notoriety that he's like, of course Hulk, I'll do it. Yeah, obviously Leno knows wrestling. I guess he was a bit of a fan, maybe as well.
Oh,
I mean, he
I'm sure he was at one time. At that period of time, there's a thing called the Q factor where they show pictures and say, "Do you know who this is?"
right. Yep.
Hogan's more people knew who Hulk Hogan was than the Pope at the time. So that
Q
says something.
rating or Q factor, whatever they're
Yeah,
called. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
So Leno agrees to do it. Did you think like, wow, you're not going to really wrestle when he's saying like, no, I'm really going to wrestle? Like, how did that go down with you as far as you putting together the match and you booking it?
I,
Because you got
I
to be
did.
like kind of surprised, right?
Yeah, I didn't put the match together at all. I
Mm.
just let them do it because I didn't want to let my brain overrun something with thinking. You're sitting down with guys, and I don't want my brain to start thinking, oh, he can do this. I didn't want Jay Leno to get hurt. So, Hogan laid out the match and he did what he wanted to do. And it got me out of a position where if I laid that match out and he got a busted leg or broke his arm, that would have came back on me. You know what I
Right.
mean? Yeah.
Yep.
So I got myself out of the middle on that one.
So when you're like have to be putting the show together and booking the show, this is literally like the Hogan creative control. Like, I got this one, brother. Me and Eric, we got this, and like we're laying out the plans for this. You're not even involved in
I
putting.
was listening to it. Yeah.
Okay.
I was listening to it. And I might have thrown a few words in, but I didn't want to have a chance where, first of all, I think he actually worked out a couple of times with Hogan. Hogan went to LA. But I didn't want to put anybody in that position where I would maybe put him in a position to get himself injured really bad, because the thing about Jay Leno, he seemed to be a hell of a nice guy. He was down to earth, and I thought, boy, I may say something like, "Hey, can you take a choke slam from Hulk?" You know what I mean? And that would have been it.
Right.
And the Jays, we wouldn't be seeing Jay Leno's automobiles driving around. You know what I mean?
Yes. What did you think of being an old school guy? Like, what did you think of like a celebrity wrestling? Was that like
Well,
against it? You for it or against it?
I think I've told you this before. Dinosaurs disappeared because they couldn't evolve. Or maybe they did evolve into birds, so I'm not that smart. But most guys that are traditionalists would say no. Uh, it broadened. You got to look at the long range picture of this. People wanted to see it with Leno because they took it over like a shoot, the TV program. And then when they gave the match, they weren't that disappointed because they knew he wasn't a wrestler. And it was like I wrestled Mr. T in a match twice, and he was very, very nice guy. I mean, I know Piper had problems with him, and Other guys had problems with them. He said to me, "I've wrestled amateur." I said, "Well, we'll go out. We'll do takedowns and stuff like this." And then when it was time to go, I was supposed to knock him out, and Hulk was coming down. And Jimmy was supposed to give me the megaphone. Well, I kind of stiffed him on the megaphone to let him know who was wrestling. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But he
Yep.
came back, and I said, "Oh, sorry, I stiffed you." And he was nice, but at the time, think about this. We're talking about WWE as it's on the Forbes 500. Vince is a billionaire. This all started with WrestleMania 1, and Mr. T was invaluable
Yep.
to that match.
I
They were
agree.
on Saturday Night Live. They wouldn't have gotten on Saturday Night Live at that time, just having Hogan. Mr. T was very instrumental. They hosted the show, if you remember.
Yep.
They're on MTV. And look, if the traditionalists said, "Oh, he ain't going to be in the match, I'm not going to give him nothing," maybe there wouldn't have been a WrestleMania 2. So they did what they had to do to get there. And sometimes, the ends justify the means. It's like the Dungeon of Doom. I was talking to somebody about that the other day. They said they loved it. I said, "Well, you might have loved it, but I hated it. I mean, I just came off of having Rotundo, Dr. Death, and Steiner."
Yep.
And I said, the reason why that was done is I couldn't have them up and down the card. So I lumped them together to eventually gain Hulk's confidence, and the rest is history.
Yep. What do you think, though? Because T, obviously an athlete, whether people realize it or not, he's a big guy, can handle himself. Dennis Rodman, who's there, great athlete. Jay Leno, just an actor, not an athlete at all. Does that change the perception at all, or does that change your opinion on having celebrities there?
Well, it changed my position this way. I didn't, I knew what they did was great. And I thought that the layout of the match should have been anytime he got in the ring, he was scrambling to get away from them, you know what I mean? Rather than twisting Hogan's arm and Hogan's on his knees selling for him, you know what I mean? I think the match was, and you got to realize this too. They were looking down the road to get on Jay and other shows and not to embarrass anybody. So everybody would say, "Oh, I'd like to do that wrestling," because then after that, we had a flood of people that were celebrities. You remember George Foreman we had?
Yep.
We had Shaquille O'Neal way before AEW had it. Rodman. We had Malone. We had the late, great Kevin Green.
Reggie White.
Reggie White. So, but those guys were athletes. But I thought if it would have been, and I'm not into comedy, but I think it would have been funny if Hogan went to chase him and he went through his legs a couple of times. And, maybe when he went through his legs, he punched Hulk in the back and Hulk turned around to grab him and he went through his arms. Something where he wasn't selling for Jay. But I understand why he did, because Jay went to probably parties and he said, "Oh, they treated me like wonderful. I never even felt them." You know what I mean? So I guess the ends justified the means.
What did you think about the WWF at this point? Because really, I mean, it's becoming a real war here in the summer of '98 as they're catching up. Really started catching up in the fall, in April. Started really catching on your heels. 83 weeks is over, but you're kind of going back and forth. What do you think about them? I mean, they're doing great. Stone Cold Steve Austin obviously is the megastar. Are you getting nervous here with the WWF, or are you not thinking about them?
Well, Austin. Do you think Austin? I mean, I'm asking you a rhetorical question. I think that Austin was the biggest. Austin and Rock are the biggest stars they ever had, and maybe Rock wouldn't become the biggest star that he was if Austin didn't come along.
Right.
So I saw, what was going on with Austin, and then Austin was wrestling the best heel in the business, Vince McMahon.
Yep.
So I knew they were gonna, and then when Tyson came along, then I knew we were in deep shit. Because Mike was still perceived as the most dangerous man on the planet.
Is that why you guys went with some celebrities here? You wanted to kind of, I know obviously you used Rodman the year before and it really worked out well, but you really kind of doubled down on the celebrities. Is that because of kind of counteracting WWF's hot streak?
Probably. I mean, I had nothing to do to get the celebrities. So you're probably right. And they just had gotten, I'll give you an example of things. There's something I've never understood, and it just happened a couple of years ago that maybe you can help me. Okay, you remember how they pushed that Tyson thing?
Oh,
well, he didn't wrestle, right? He
nope,
didn't wrestle.
Referee. Yep.
You had in Saudi Arabia, you had the world heavyweight boxing champion against Braun Strowman, right?
Yep.
Did they not market it that right?
Very strange. They literally was just on the network and it was just in Saudi Arabia. They didn't really push it that much, really. And I know supposedly Tyson Fury got $12 million for that.
Yeah, and can you believe that? I mean, here you have the lineal world heavyweight champion boxer who knocked out, he didn't pin him, but he knocked him out and he got counted out. And I don't think that was used correctly, because look at all the mileage they got out of Tyson, who didn't even wrestle.
Yep, true.
Yeah.
So with this show, the actual pay-per-view starts off with Ming defeating the Barbarian with Jimmy Hart in about 5 minutes. This is kind of Ming's first pay-per-view match in many months, actually since World War III in November of 97. Ming eventually gets the Tongan death grip on Barbarian to score the pinfall victory. What do you think here? A little bit of a face turn here for Ming, and obviously, he'd been gone. Was he injured?
He had just been gone. Was put on the shelf for a little while. But, again, I tell you about the best match beyond the first match, But this is a different crowd. This is a bloodthirsty crowd. He was they're both hitting each other brutally hard. But Ming was hitting Barb so hard, you could see tears coming out of Barb's eyes. Not that he was crying, but over pain. And I remember one time they're exchanging these chops, and I asked Barb afterwards, I said, I heard him say something to you. What did he say? He said, and Barb said, let's show them where we're from. Meaning, they're the two toughest in the business. And it was a good way to start that violence that was still controlled violence in the wrestling ring. It wasn't chairs. It wasn't, trash cans. It was just two monsters fighting. Godzilla against whoever Godzilla fights. King Kong.
Yeah, I was going to say King Kong. Or Mothra, yeah. Yep.
Mothra. Yeah.
So after the match, Jimmy Hart, Hugh Morris, and Barbarian try to beat up Ming. Hacksaw Jim Duggan makes the save. So is Ming going to be getting, like, you think maybe a bit of a face turn here? Or like, what were your thoughts? Did you want to do
Yeah.
something with him?
Yeah, I wanted to do something with him and turn him face because the NWO, you know what I mean? And later on, I mean, you know, they worked, he worked with a bunch of the NWO guys, and he was, you know, it's funny, I said to somebody just recently, Ming's reputation after he got out of the business is he's more over now than he was when he was in the business.
Right.
Because people have heard these stories and they're all true.
After like the shoot interview started coming out, then he started, the myth starts
Right.
growing and growing because that's when everyone's finally started hearing all these awesome stories.
Right. Yeah.
The next matchup, the Public Enemy, Rocco Rock and Johnny Grunge defeat the Dancing Fools, Disco Inferno, and Alex Wright with Tokyo Magnum in about 15 minutes. It starts as a traditional match, then kind of becomes basically a street fight here. What do you think here? It's a pretty long match, almost 15 minutes for these two teams.
Yeah, and I thought, I always thought Rocco and God bless them, Rocco and Johnny never got their due. And, they were, again, appealing to ECW crowd. And, you start with Ming and Barb, then you got the Rocco Rock and Johnny Grunge. I'm trying to get everybody to come to the banquet.
So with them and this match, is there any like thought of like, okay, we could do something with these four guys and move them up the ladder, or is this just one of those like filler matches? This is just for fun. Let's see what we can do here in front of this tough crowd who's not really a wrestling crowd.
Yeah, and that's why they're there, because I had violence in the first one and a different kind of violence on the next one.
So with that match being so long, what was the thought process there? You just
Time,
filling time?
because you couldn't have Jay Leno out there for 20 or 30 minutes, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So it was a time eater.
Gotcha. The next matchup, Saturn defeats Raven with Lodi and a Canyon defeats Canyon and Raven. Raven was with Lodi in a Ravens rules match in about 12 minutes and 30 seconds. What do you think here? Horace Boulder gets involved. Lodi gets involved. Eventually, Saturn hits the driver on Raven to score the pin. But a lot of Flock versus Flock stuff going on. Was there a bigger plan for Saturn?
Yeah, I mean, we were going to make him and Dean the tag team champions later on down the line.
What do you think here with Raven and Saturn feuding? Because that was one of like the bright spots here, just because they had good chemistry. Saturn was really kind of in his physical prime here for sure. Raven was great in WCW. I thought pretty underrated, to be honest. In WCW, I just love that character in that run, like the rich guy, but he's a psycho. He loves pain. What do you think here about those guys, and were they going to be able to elevate up the card? Because like we always said, that glass ceiling in WCW.
That glass ceiling was there, but Raven could have broken through. Saturn could have broken through, but it's going to take some time. And the thing was, I gave Raven a lot of rope because he's a very smart guy, and we played mental chess once in a while, him and I. But I would say, "What are you going to do tonight?" And he'd tell me, and he reminded me a bit of myself, that when someone gave me a line not to cross, I would definitely cross the line and push the line further. But Raven was an incredible performer. Again, there were so many great performers that didn't get their due then because there were so many big stars, and not disrespecting either Saturn or Raven. Raven should have been a huge star anywhere he went. I've I've thought that maybe. Do you know him, John? Have you met him?
Oh yeah, bunch of
Okay,
times.
you know he's got a very strange personality and a strange sense of humor,
Yes.
and I think that kept him back. Where I love this humor. He do things with a straight face, and you think, oh, what a jerk, and then 30 minutes later, you'd start laughing and say, oh, I get it now. You know what I mean?
Yep. He's a strange character. Had some odd conversations with him for sure. You never know if he's working you or if he's serious.
He's working you. That's what I had to learn, that he's working you. He's working all the time.
Now, was he on?
Didn't his father, didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'll forget it.
Oh,
Didn't his father own or was the editor of the Inquirer?
Ooh, that I don't know. I'm not sure. That's interesting.
I'm pretty sure. He might have been the editor of the Inquirer.
Was he unhappy at all, though, at this point, because you're about to break up the flock? It seems, it's obviously leading to that in about a month or so. It's really going to implode. But was he happy in WCW?
He is so smart that I think, and I hope I'm not talking out of school, Raven. If I am, I apologize. He is so smart. I think that he finds things to depress him because he used to, he's straight as an arrow, but at one time he had a substance abuse problem. But he was one of those guys that said, okay, this is it, and quit cold turkey, bop. And I think he was so intense that, yeah, he was happy, but I think that if he won the world title, he would have said, oh, there's a screw missing out of this belt. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
So the next matchup, Rey Mysterio Jr. defeats Psychosis to become the #1 contender for the Cruiserweight Championship. The match goes about 13 minutes, 30 seconds. The weird thing is here, the crowd not into a great match like this, and it's just the way it is in Sturgis. Like we've been saying, for the last 2 weeks, it's just like, okay, Mysterio can have an awesome match. Crowd just doesn't appreciate it. They don't quite get it. They don't know the style at all. It just seems like, wow, like great match. A crowd almost ruined it.
And that isn't the only reason, John. You know the big reason why?
Racism?
Yeah, 95% of the crowd there might have been a few, I forget what the Mexican motorcycle gang is, and they're doing a series on it, a spin-off off of Sons of Anarchy now. Do you ever watch Sons of Anarchy?
The Mayans.
The Mayans. I didn't see many Mayans there, so they didn't get it, and there was some racism, I think, too.
Good match too. I liked it, but it does almost get ruined by the crowd, of course.
Yeah.
Just they're restless and they're all kind of weird during the match. The next match, Stevie Ray defeats Chavo Guerrero in about 3 minutes to retain the television championship. What do you think here? It's kind of, I don't know, just a short and not really sweet match. I mean, it's a little jokey at points too with Chavo. What do you think here with this match being just short, sweet? Well, short, unsweet, and boom, it's over. 2 minutes, 35 seconds.
Same thing. We shortened their match after I saw the response of that crowd. I got Chavo going out, right?
Yep.
And then Stevie,
Yep.
So I didn't want them to be subject to any bullshit because that crowd did get rowdy.
What do you think about Stevie Ray at this point? I mean, he's becoming a member of the NWO. He's kind of floundering a little bit. He's somehow now he's the television champion. Booker T seems like the star of the group. He's away from Harlem Heat. What do you think about Stevie Ray at this point?
Here's something. as great as Booker T is, I mean, his resume speaks for itself. His brother had a presence, unlike most of the guys I've ever met. He looked like an enforcer, no, not Arn Anderson, but he looked like someone that was going to tell you right from wrong, and if you're doing something wrong, he's going to let you know. But he was a very intelligent guy. He looked like $1 million. I always thought that when they went to New York, that they put them both in singles or in a group. But Stevie was a businessman, had other things he wanted to do. And he was one of my all-time favorite people that I ever worked with. He was great.
Man, one of those guys that is just like he had it all. He's a big guy, has a great look, but his brother even better. You know what I mean? It's almost a tough break to be Steve. You almost want to not be related to the guy because he almost overshadows you a bit.
It always happens in tag teams. Dickie Murdoch, the Outlaws, Dickie Murdoch and Dusty Rhodes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember hearing a story that when they were in Minneapolis together and drawing huge money, Vern told Dusty not to talk, that Dickie was the talker of the two. Now, Dickie was a good talker, but he wasn't Dusty Rhodes. And, Dusty became the star. The Midnight Rockers.
Marty and Sean, yeah.
Yeah, you can go down the line, of tag teams that one went on to huge success. The other one went on to moderate or good success, but there was a difference. So, I mean, Booker could do shit in the ring that nobody could. But at that time, I would put Stevie Ray physically against anybody in that locker room.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A monster of a man.
And great worker, solid. If he came back in today's day, if we could go back and change different eras, he could have matches with Brock, Goldberg, who's the champion that's going to wrestle Goldberg this week? Bobby Lashley. He could have a match with Bobby Lashley. He could have had a match with anybody physically. I always thought maybe I screwed up by not featuring him in a single. It might have been my thing. But I actually think that when Booker went to New York, Stevie had so much more business to do in regular, business. And Stevie did very well in business. He has a very successful podcast. Great family man. I really, really thought the world of both of them.
Absolutely. The next segment up, Rick Steiner hits the ring. J.J. Dillon, the chairman of the WCW Executive Committee, comes out to inform him that the match with Scott Steiner is not going to happen. Scott got attacked with a chair from Rick a few weeks earlier. He's going to be out for a few weeks. Out comes Buff Bagwell in a cervical collar, pushing a bandage. Scott Steiner out in a stretcher, blaming Rick as the fans are booing very loudly. J.J. Dillon reminds Buff and Scotty that contractually the match must happen and be rescheduled within the next 45 days, and says that the two will meet at Fall World 1998. The fans like that even less. That would mean that if Scott misses Fall Brawl 98, Scott would be banned from wrestling, quote unquote, for life, not NWO for life, but he'd be banned from wrestling for life. And at the sign of the announcement and the ban of Scott Steiner, he miraculously sits up, jumps up from the stretcher, and flings something at Rick. Rick catches it and runs to catch and basically run off the heels. No contest with the Steiner brothers, but all of a sudden Scotty is healthy. What's going on here? Why the bait and switch with the Steiner brothers at the pay-per-view?
Because you know what you said, how they didn't appreciate Ray and Psychosis match.
Yeah.
This was going to be such a physical match that they weren't going to appreciate. And they, brother against brother, I think they needed to be featured and not have any bullshit from the crowd. And I was afraid of that.
With this, obviously, you literally just keep teasing it and they keep building and building. Is that, you think, positive or negative? Like, as far as, like, you have the ability to look back, hindsight. Do you think it was bad to keep stretching it out, or do you think that this worked out for the betterment?
No, I think it worked out for the better. Now, if we were in a regular wrestling building, you go on and have the match. But after I saw what was going on, and I thought this was going to happen because this is the third time we've been to Sturgis, right?
Yep.
I kind of knew who they liked, who they didn't like, and who they had no idea was good. It would be like, someone that eats McDonald's every day and you fly them to Paris and bring them into a great hotel and they order a steak and put ketchup on it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that's what I saw in that.
So the next matchup, Steve Mongo McMichael defeats Brian Adams in about 6 minutes, 30 seconds. This is not a good one. Mongo is trying to reform the Four Horsemen, which we're going to see next month when Flair makes his return after his bitter real-life feud with Eric Bischoff. But what do you think here? I mean, this is not a good one between Adams and Mongo.
No, and he was put in that position because look at what position we are in the country. You're either a Packer fan or a Chicago Bear fan. He played for both of them. So I'm going to try to get the most out of it,
Yep.
And it just didn't click. It's not that anybody didn't try. It just didn't click.
So after that, the next match is Juventud Guerrera defeating Chris Jericho for the WCW Cruiserweight Championship. The special guest referee, Dean Malenko, who gets a modicum of revenge on Jericho in this match, actually kind of helps Hoovy win a little bit. It helps spring him up for Springboard Hurricanrana. What do you think here? Hoovy is the new WCW Cruiserweight Champion after beating Jericho.
I think that, Hoovy had worked hard for a long time. And he needed to be repaid for working so hard. And it wasn't going to hurt Jericho, as we still see that he's on top. And I thought it would help Dean also and get him involved in the mix deeper. So I think it elevated them all. And did you notice in this match, they didn't react as bad as when Ray and Psychosis wrestled?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that because of Jericho and Dean?
Yeah, I think so. Don't you?
Oh, definitely, for sure.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, they didn't like Ray and Psychosis, but they seem to enjoy this match for sure. Yeah. Just one of those things, like, okay, Dean and Jericho have this big feud, but then you throw Hoovy in the mix, right? I mean, that's a great rub for Hoovy because not only is he in the mix, he wins a title from Jericho, who's a thorn in everybody's side at this point.
And you got to remember, those Dakotas in Wyoming, and they're all very conservative states. In fact, do you remember after Sturgis last year, where North Dakota had the most per capita COVID cases?
Yeah. Yep.
So I
They're
think that's
yeah. The next matchup, Goldberg wins the NWO Invitational Battle Royal in about 8 minutes. Also in the match, Scott Hall, the Giant, Kurt Hennig, Scott Norton, Kevin Nash, Sting, Lex Luger, Conan, and then, of course, Goldberg himself. So 9 guys are in this elimination style battle royal. Goldberg wins, ends up racking up a bunch of victories, becoming 130-0 to end the night, last eliminating the Giant to win.
Yeah.
What do you think here? I mean, this is a star-studded match and an interesting way to get all these huge names onto the card.
Yeah, and to get Goldberg as the winner, because people would think, oh, they're going to gang up on Goldberg. And as we're talking, next weekend he's wrestling for the world title again.
Yes. Yep. Crazy to believe.
Yeah.
So do you think at this point he's the golden goose here for WCW as the world champ?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
With him here, I mean, there's a bunch of big names in this match. Last eliminates the Giant. Is your thought process here like, okay, he's not in the main event, but I want to make sure that he shines the brightest because, you know, Leno's in the main event with Hogan. Like, I want to make sure Goldberg is kind of the emphasis, even though he's not main eventing?
Exactly. You hit it right. It couldn't have been said any better. Exactly.
So then we have the main event of the evening. Diamond Dallas Page and Jay Leno with Kevin Eubanks defeat Hollywood Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff, who was with the Disciple and Miss Elizabeth, in about 14 minutes and 30 seconds. What do you think here? Celebrity can't lose, right? Is that kind of the thought process here as Leno gets the victory over Eric Bischoff?
Yeah. Celebrity can't lose. They opened up a great relationship with Jay Leno, and because of that, other celebrities fell in line. It was easy to get, much more easy getting now on talk shows. So it was good.
What did you think about the match itself? I know you didn't like that hammerlock by Leno and Hogan, but what did you think about the match itself? Like, did it deliver?
Yeah, I think when Page and Hulk got in there, it delivered. I think Eric did a good job. And I think that Leno did as well as could be expected.
After the match, Hogan, Bischoff, and Disciple attack Jay Leno and DDP until Goldberg comes out and beats up Hogan and Bischoff with one single spear. All the baby faces celebrate, aka DDP, Goldberg, Eubanks, and Leno, who was christened the king of late night, of course. And he looked exhausted out there. He did not look like the same shape he walked into the ring. You think he was ready for that?
No. As he's so used to going on stage, there's something different about wrestling, and just the physicality of it got to him. You know what I mean? And I'm sure he had butterflies, and I'm sure he was saying, "What am I doing here?" In the middle of Sturgis, in front of all these people, with Hulk Hogan.
What did you think overall of the show? Because it's not WWE's best effort. We'll put it that way. It's not a great show.
No, I have to give it a in the middle, thumbs in the middle, John. John.
Yep.
Okay, I lost you sight wise, but I got to give it thumbs in the middle because of the connections they made, and we got Goldberg pushed in a good way.
And then as the show is over, and I never watched this, but Travis Tritt has a concert after that. Who set this up?
I'm sure there was somebody in the event, maybe Gary Juster or Brain Zevlov, or I don't know who would have handled that, but I'm sure it was one of those guys.
Yeah, that just was weird because it's actually a part of the pay-per-view. I mean, I stopped watching it, but I just like, wow, that's weird. Travis Tritt is actually like on WCW pay-per-view.
Right.
So overall, it was it was an okay show. It wasn't the best effort for sure. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't the all-time worst pay-per-view, but it wasn't great. The crowd killed some of the good matches, but I liked Ray and Psychosis, and I liked Jericho and Hoovy, obviously. Goldberg went over in that match, which I guess is good for Goldberg. And then, of course, Jay Leno wasn't as bad in the main event as you would think he would have been, although the pay-per-view buy rates say it's a good thing, 365K. So I guess
Right.
all in all, it did its job.
Yeah, with the 365Ks, it certainly did its job. What are kind of buy rates they doing now?
We don't know because of the network. All we know is AEW does about 100,000 buys per pay-per-view that they've done.
Okay. Well, that's pretty good starting out of the box. So,
Absolutely. So let's hit the plugs. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. Check out the website, tmptempire.com. And of course, you can follow Kevin on Instagram at Taskmaster Talks. And go to Pro Wrestling Tees, ProWrestlingTees.com, and visit the Kevin Sullivan store. Kevin, what else you got going on?
well, next weekend I'll be at SWE Fury. They have a pay-per-view, and I'm looking forward to it. So if any of the fans that follow our show want to say hello to me, I'll be around.
All right. Great stuff, as always. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you right back here next week for a little Taskmaster Talks with Kevin Sullivan. See you next week, folks.